I bought a property for $1 in Canada. $1. Not like it wasn't given to me, negotiated it down to $1 Canadian.
Wow.
I've kind of switched my strategy to on market because of a number of reasons. One, it's the time, and two, it's the leverage. I was never a renovation guy. Like I've never been a handy guy. So some of the properties I've never been to. So that's a thing in itself. And the properties that I have been to, there's no way I'm fixing anything. If you see me pick up like a hammer or a drill, call the police. Like something is going to go wrong. I'm not a handy guy at all, but I'm very good at the numbers and I'm very good with people. The spread is so small and your risk is too high, which I've gotten to a flip where my risk was too high and I learned from that. So I'm not going to do that again. That is a quick way to get into it. He said, hey man, I prayed about it. Most investors get one or two big breaks in their life. He's like, this is going to be yours.
How are you getting a competitive edge to snatch those properties up before they go into, let's say, a multiple offer situation?
This is great question. So a lot of the times,
welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Show. Today, we're joined by Isaiah Henry. He's built a real estate portfolio across Ontario using BRRRRs, flips, and wholetailing, often 100 kilometers from where he lives. Now, from turning underused units into cash flow to structure creative deals that close fast, Isaiah's figured out how to win without doing full renos. So today, we want to unpack the strategy behind those quick wins and how he's scaling one smart deal at a time. So, Isaiah, I want to welcome you to the show.
hey, thanks so much for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in real estate and what your journey's been like to this point?
Sure. So I got started with a condo, which I would never recommend anyone do now, but I was like it was like end of 2017, early 2018. I just came back from university and I think I was still working at the pool. I was still working as a lifeguard there. And I saw this ad in the paper. It was one of those condos, Markham and Ellesmere for the Scarborough people. And I just saw the numbers and I saw the deposit structure. That's what really got me. The deposit structure was like 3% down on day one. And then you had 180 days to come up with the extra 2%. And then the extra 20% you built over the next 3 years. So I was just doing the math. I just crunched the numbers based on where I was making at the pool and based on what I had in savings. I'm like, oh, I can actually do this. And the price point was pretty low. I think it was like 280 to get in. Ended up being more than that because they add on all these charges by the time you get to the closing table. But anyway, did that, mapped it out. I was like, oh, I can definitely do this. And then I was also seeing, I had a friend who bought phase one of the same condo project, and their price went up. And now there's phase two and phase three. So I say, hey, you know what? This might be an opportunity for me to get in. So I got my mom. We went down, purchased a condo. There's like a stack of paperwork like that's in my face. But
Yeah.
anyway, got that one under my belt, and in a few months I was checking what other condos were selling for in the area, and it was like a six-figure lift already. Now again, has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with my investment prowess, but just taking the risk, putting some money down really sparked the idea. And then from there, I was like, okay, let me learn actually what this real estate thing is. Is there a way to make this viable? Got a little bit more serious, purchased another one in Oshawa. And that was a simple buy and hold, nothing special about that one. Had a tenant in place, so that was easy. And then I got more into the value add renovations. Did my first BRRRR project out in Windsor. Started doing some long distance investing in wholesaling in Sudbury. And then made my way up to Timmins, where I find most of my portfolio today.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good breakdown. So that first condo that you jumped into, you bought that one as a rental property or with the intentions of renting it out, right?
So I had it as both, right? So I was living in Pickering at the time, and this was in Scarborough. So I said, hey, I'd like to rent it out. I think the numbers work. It was a one bedroom plus den. So I said, worst case scenario, I move in and I can make it work for primary residence. But hey, if I can rent it out, continue staying in my parents and stacking it cash, that might work as well. And it was also a longer closing. It was like 3.5 years to close. So I said, I'll probably have something figured out by there. At that time, I was trying to be a cop, and no, I wasn't on with Toronto yet, but at that time I was going to be a cop. So I was like, hey, well, if I get on with Toronto, it might be easier because I already have a condo in the city. So we can do that. So I had some options A, B, and C.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that makes sense. How old were you at this stage?
23, I
Okay.
think. Yeah, 23.
Okay. So you progressed from there, you bought the next rental, and then you decided to go the BRRRR strategy, and then you decided to go for the long distance. What were some of the deciding factors for that progression?
Yeah, for sure. So I got into the one at home because I was so scared of this first time home buyer thing. And then like now that I know what it is, it's laughable. I
Yeah.
was like, I used my first time home buyer thing. But anyway, so I used it on on this condo townhouse in Oshawa. The price point was great. Tenant, I guess there was a divorce. That was my first foray into, personal distress. I'm sure you've talked about like the, property distress, personal distress, market distress, the 3Ds that you're looking for. So that was my first foray into personal distress because this guy had a divorce. He needed to sell quick, but he wanted to stay in the house, right? But most people wanted to move in, but he was making it very difficult. I said, hey, I just want to buy it and you rent it out. So we had the rental agreement. I didn't have to screen tenants, didn't have to do any maintenance. He was in there for the first 3 years, raised the rent. It was nice and easy. Didn't make a lot of money, but that property, like that's the best appreciated property I had in my portfolio without any like renovations or value add. So I did that, had some equity, and I started really learning. So I started reading a lot of books, joining some groups. I don't think I got into a mentorship program. I think that was my fourth property I did, but I saw everyone else doing it. This is when like, everybody was getting into real estate, bird getting real sexy. So I was at this point, I was a police officer with Toronto, and I had a colleague who had a property in Windsor. I knew Windsor was a value market. I knew a couple other investors investing there. And she said, hey, I have this property. I want to move in with my boyfriend in Whitby, but I don't want this condo. So I just raised my hand. I said, oh, I'll buy it. Never seen it. Didn't know what it looked like. Didn't know what she wanted. I'm like, and this is a public declaration. Like um, we're in like police college. I just raised my hand. I'm like, I'll buy that house. And you gotta, you say what your word is. So I was like, oh, what have I got myself into? Anyway, bad tenant situation. So, learned about a little cash for keys, learned about how to deal with that. My first four LTB situations. But yeah, I got that property super cheap, super dirty. Did a full, not a full rental, but a more intense rental for sure. Like four, four bedroom cosmetic, added a bathroom, added laundry, I redid the basement, a really nice unit, and then, you get the appraisal back and you do the whole burn, they refinance it the first time and you're like, "Oh, this is how it works. Okay, so this could be some real stuff." Now again, my problem is I was in a little bit of a higher price point, so my properties were barely cash flowing, but I had
Yeah.
the idea. It's like, oh, okay, so I just need to do this, but make sure it's cash, like, higher cash flowing at the end. And that's what kind of drove me up north because the numbers were making sense. I could still burr and get my money out. But now the capture was, way higher up there.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, so we started with a distressed seller, moved to distressed properties, and you're like, okay, bar method, this is fantastic. What sort of pushed you towards the wholetailing side of things?
Yeah. So I didn't have my license at the time. I have my license now. So wholetailing is I was never a renovation guy. Like I've never been a handy guy. I'll be honest, I've never so some of the properties I've never been to. So that's a thing in itself. And the properties that I have been to, there's no way I'm fixing anything. If you see me pick up like a hammer or a drill, all the police, like something is going to go wrong. I'm not a handy guy at all, but I'm very good at the numbers and I'm very good with people. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to really leverage a full flip because I'd still have to, pay private money to buy it. I have to still pay for the construction. So it'd be very hard to turn a profit. But I'm very good at dealing with situations. So if I could find a way to get the money on a very, very short term note and flip the property without doing much to it, that's when I saw value. So I was starting to looking for undervalued situations rather than undervalued properties. Properties that weren't really in distress, but either the market or the seller has forced that property into an area which I can, provide a service for. So I started doing a couple wholesales. Again, I wasn't making big money, but I was building momentum. I think that's just a killer thing. I was just doing a lot of transactions, either referring them to wholesalers, doing the wholesale myself, but I was just piling up transactions. So I knew what was going on. So now when I throw an offer in or I do a contract for someone, it's so lazy. It's like it's not a big deal for me because I've done so many and I understand people, they haven't done one, so they're nervous of putting together. Man, I'll call a realtor and put 7 offers in a week. I don't care. And it's not because I think that's what you need to do all the time, but I've just done it so much and I can see the results of it. Like Alex Hormozy always says, like the volume that is required is way bigger than you think. So people are like,
Yeah.
oh, I put 1 or 2 offers out a month. I said, bro, put 1 to 2 offers out a day and then double that. Like that's what people are actually doing when you're looking for deals. So the whole tailing was nice. It was a way for me to, get into the properties, do more transactions, just get more experience. And then moving, you'd wholesale 1 or 2 and find one you want to keep and then be able to do that. and then be able to do that. And then really came through the management. Once you figured out the management piece, that's when you really could scale. Because everyone thinks it's easy to get into the property, and I say, yeah, probably. But when you don't know how to manage it or your management really sucks, like then you start, bleeding money each month, and that's like the worst thing you can do.
100%. Now, for people out there listening and they're like, what the heck is wholetailing? I've heard about like wholesaling. Do you mind giving them a bit of an explanation there?
Yeah, wholetailing is like the pretty boy flip. So as you can tell, pretty boy stuff. Um, when you do a flip, like it's involved. It's flips are very lucrative but very risky. Yeah, to get good money on a flip, I always say you need to control one of three aspects. You either need to control the money, you need to control uh the construction, or you
Yeah,
need to control the transaction, right? So if you're a realtor, you control the transaction, buy, sell with the commission. If you're a contractor, you control the construction with your trades. And if you have cash, not ability to get cash, but if you have cash, you control the money. Because if you don't control at least two of these three things, it's
no
very hard to
spread.
turn a profit, right? The spread is so
100%.
small and your risk is too high, which I've gotten to a flip where my risk was too high and I learned from that. So I'm not going to do that again. Anyway,
100%.
wholetailing your question. Wholetailing is finding a property, either personal market or property distress, but it's not bad. It's either a very, very light cosmetic, like I'm talking like junk removal, sweep clean, sometimes just clean the windows and get it back on the market, taking something off the private market, putting it on the public market, and making the spread because you know the situation and you know how to leverage the differences. So if I'm seeing comps, let's say in Timmins, these will sell single family 3 bed math will sell for 220, and I can easily find one for 180. That's not a big spread. A flipper would never take that on. But as a real estate agent and a wholetailer, I would take that on because that 40K spread with the commission and very little to go in it. I'd have that property purchased on a Thursday. I'd have it listed on the Saturday and we'd be taking offer Sunday night, right? That is a quick way to get into it. The private money you're getting into, you're not paying too much. So it's a very short flip where you're not doing big large scale renovations, very small renovations if any at all, and taking that from the private market and putting it on the public market.
Okay. Yeah. So firstly, those three variables, I love highlighting that when I'm working with my clients. It's a big thing because a lot of people don't know about that and they're looking and they're like, I'm running my numbers. There's no spread here for me. You either have to have the money, you need to be doing the renovations yourself, or you need to be sourcing the deals yourself. If you're getting them from the MLS or you're getting them from a wholesaler, there's a fee that comes with that, whether it's a wholesale fee, whether it's a commission. So all of that eats into your spread. And if you're outsourcing all three, chances of you finding a property that has a spread is almost non-existent. Now, so I love the fact that you mentioned that because I'm always preaching that. But you gave a high level breakdown on the wholetailing side. And I'm sure listeners out there who have never heard this probably have like a dozen questions. It sounds appealing. It really does. Uh, First question probably would be, if you're finding these properties and they listed below market value, how are you getting a competitive edge to snatch those properties up before they go into, let's say, a multiple offer situation? And if it's something that's so close to being open to mainstream, so close to potentially being turnkey, where it doesn't need a lot, like a good clean is good enough to resell it. How are you competing with those other buyers? Are you going in without conditions? What does that look like? How are you getting that competitive edge to snatch it up?
This is great question. So a lot of the times, especially now, I no longer compete for investment properties. And this is tough for my clients as well, because, especially as a realtor, when you're working with them, they have a client, they want to compete. And I understand that. The only thing is when you compete, especially on the open market, like MLS, like public market stuff, like you're bidding up the price with someone else. I either am first, like you list that property at 405 and like you have an offer, not a call, like I'll just send you an offer at 410. That's either I'm doing it or I'm doing it in 60 days when it's been on the market for that. I don't even play around in the middle stuff. A couple of reasons why I don't is just the time factor. If I'm spending all this money, like spending all this time in between, looking at shopping it, that seller isn't at a point where they feel the pain. At that first day, they're just happy to get an offer. They're like, oh man, I might never get an offer again. I should probably consider and might maybe take this. I've won that strategy. Now you started going in the middle, the seller's like, oh, well, I have a couple showings next week. And I had some guy in Ottawa who he's thinking about it. My realtor's mom's best friend's neighbor's son might be interested in it. And now you're just playing a game where you don't have any real leverage. But then you go 60 days, it's been on the market, there's been a price reduction, there's been a couple people, maybe even an accepted offer that's fallen through. Now the listing is stale. That's where you go in and you negotiate yourself a good deal. There's all these different negotiation strategies, clauses, and tactics that you can put into your offer to make it a little bit more appealing for yourself, but still help that seller out. Now, again, if the property doesn't really have any distress, don't waste your time. If it's just a nice property that's overpriced, maybe not something you're getting into. So I'm looking for either a seller very motivated. Some realtors are crazy these days. I've literally seen it in the listing say motivated seller. And I said, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that, in my opinion, that's embarrassing. Because
Yeah.
you're just telling everyone's like, oh, my client's willing to take less money for this. But as a
100%.
realtor, your
Yeah.
job is to make sure your client makes the most amount of money with
As
the least
much as
amount
they
of
can.
headaches, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And for me as an investor, I'm working with my clients. I said, we're gonna flame these guys. So I
Yeah.
come in, I give them the business, I give them two offers. Like I almost like, kill them with paperwork. I know the negotiation side of it so well that you're gonna come out on top. And if you run your numbers well, like, okay, what is my risk and what is my profit? So I'm not necessarily always looking for home runs, but if you can stack up a couple singles, like that's how you win the game. You might not win the inning, but you'll win the game, right? And if you can keep playing, 5, 10 years, you just keep stacking singles, you'll look back and be like, oh, wow, I got a war chest of cash ready to deploy, or you have a portfolio of very simple, easy properties that you can, again, build wealth with, sell, liquidate. You have a whole bunch of options that way. So I love the wholesale strategy, especially for someone who's not super handy in construction.
100%. 100%. There's quite a bit to unpack there. But um, firstly, is okay, so you're looking for those that have just hit the market. Now, I know personally when I'm listing a property, whether it's a flip, whether it's just a seller looking to sell their property, one of my favorite strategies in this market, at least, is to list it a little bit obviously below market value with the intention of leaving it on the market for, like, call it a weekend or so, get as many showings in, get as many buyers in, get as many offers in, have a lot more leverage on the selling side versus
Mhm.
negotiating with one buyer, because then you can drive the price up, get your seller as much for the property as possible. Now, I know when I'm listing a property is if I've had sellers that think like this, is if we get an offer and I think, you know what, this is actually a really good offer, and I'm like, hey, you should take this offer because I know it's above market value. They may have the thought, well, shoot, are we leaving money on the table here? You know what I mean? There's always that thought if they get an offer too soon. I've been on the buying side as well. And then, of
Yeah.
course,
Oh, yeah.
my investors never seen the property. We want to get our offer in. We know it's priced well. We want to get it in before it goes into a multiple. And then you sell in the heck out of your buyer, the strength of the buyer, and you put in your offer in, and you've got them under contract before they've had the other offers come in. So that's one strategy. Aside from that, I love the fact that you're skipping that middle space, because you're right. That's where you're really competing with everyone else, and the seller doesn't have it in their mind yet that, hey, maybe my property is potentially overpriced for the shape that it's in. Maybe I need to bring the price down. Maybe I need to work with these lower offers. Oftentimes they'll just ignore it at that point unless they're super motivated. So you're pushing for the listings that have been on the market for a longer time. Now, aside from that, are you doing most of them on the MLS? Are you marketing off the MLS, flyering? Do you have other strategies to get that, or is it just purely looking at the MLS and getting it that way?
Yeah, so for me personally, again, I play in tertiary market, so secondary and tertiary markets, Sudbury, Timmins, Sault Ste. Marie. Maybe I'll come a little bit south right now. I don't do too much activity. Again, my realtor business is based in the GTA. And again, I help people, we'll refer everything up if we need to. But yeah, I would say 90% of my stuff is on market. Like I bought, a number of things off market, wholesale, I've kept a couple. But I would say if I had to my portfolio, I would say 60% on market, 4% on market that I've personally kept. And then total overall deals, I would say about 50-50. Now, I've kind of switched my strategy to on market because of a number of reasons. One, it's the time, and two, it's the leverage. With the time, I'm not really looking all the time, seeing what's happening, looking at price drops and everything. I'm just like, I literally, when you get on the list, and I tell all my clients, like, when you're looking, I personally set that filter to reverse. Instead of newest first, you go oldest first. And it's going
Yeah.
to show you the oldest stuff. Those are the people in pain. They've been there for a while. When I see 75 days, 186 days, and I see this, and I seen the listing change a few times. There's a couple AI stuff you can use as well to monitor that for you. That's when you can, find some value. So I like that. Also, if you're playing in the same market, you're talking to the realtors, you're making sure you're sending your thank you cards, you're making sure you're staying in contact, they will bring you deals. I've had a number of times. I work shift work now, so I'm from off shift work. I'll wake up. There's just a text in my inbox. It's like, hey, this is the property. Here's some pictures I've taken. This is what they're looking for. Are you interested? Those are the kind of off market deals that I think are beneficial. And I think if more clients were able to have their realtors do that, I think it's better. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a time and place for marketing, but especially in this market, the money that you need to spend on marketing is expensive. Like 5 years or 7 years ago when I started, bro, you could do a text campaign or you could do a flyer campaign. No problem. You send out 1,000 flyers, 10 people would call, you get a deal. You call, this is great. But now you're sending out 10,000 flyers and one person is calling you and saying, don't ever call me again. And you're like,
Yeah.
oof, I don't know if that was worth it. Again, marketing is important. It's just like, what strategy are you looking for? So I'm trying to make a little bit more bang for my buck and leverage the people who are already out doing it, every day. So that's been working for me well. And I think you can get a ton of deals on the MLS, especially if you're strong with your negotiations. And this is where it comes to the legal side. Every realtor can open a lockbox. Every realtor can go on MLS, print you out a comp sheet and say, here it is. But when you get to the negotiation table, and I
Yeah.
literally railroad your client because you have no idea what these clauses are. Like I bought a property for $1 in Canada, $1. Not like it wasn't given to me. Negotiated it down to one Canadian dollar. I have the transfer deed and it says $1 Canadian. Those are the negotiations. Those are the ways you're actually making money. Not because, I had the best marketing plan. My Instagram's the best. You want to get
Yeah.
me in the trenches. That's when I'm going to make you money, not on Instagram or any of that.
100%, man. Yeah, that's the biggest skill is the negotiation side. And then I'd even say couple that with the relationship side. Um,
Bingo.
because it gives you access to a lot more. I know personally for a lot of my clients, I've been able to get them ahead of any other buyer just because I have a relationship with that other realtor. Um, Stuff like that. So that definitely would be the most important thing. Like, social media looks glamorous, but you need to look at their skill set beyond that and their network beyond that. But I want to dive into, I had other questions, but I feel like people listening out there are like, $1. What? How? Like they probably have a ton of questions. Tell us a little bit more about that one.
Yeah. Okay. So this one was it's an off market deal. So I was just sitting at the desk doing some work. I get a call, unknown number. Guy picks it up. Yo, is this the Timmons guy? I'm like, possibly, who wants to know? I don't know why. I had an attitude that day too, but that could just be me. So anyway, he called. I talked to him. He said, yeah, I do some work for Timmons. Then you need to buy this house. I said, first of all, sir, I don't need to buy a thing. You don't tell me what to do. And anyway, we talked. So it ended up, he was a police officer. He was with OP. So we kind of broke down about that. He told me the situation. So he picked up a property in Timmins off a tax sale, which is another great way to get properties. A little risky for my personally, but honestly, a really great way, especially if you're local. So he picked it up, but he was down in the GTA. And I don't think you realized how far Timmins was. And his plan was to do it all himself. So he did one drive up there in the winter, almost died because, those roads are not fun.
Yeah.
And like he didn't fly, if I'm going to Timmins, I'm going to fly. But he wanted to bring, his truck and materials. So he drove. Not only is that like, a full day drive plus a pretty dangerous drive. He's like, man, I had no resources up there. I didn't have a team built. He was doing all by himself. He didn't know what to do. Also, to add, his wife was getting really sick. His wife had MS, which is no fun for anyone. And he was
Yeah.
just drowning. And he's like, man, I don't know what to do. I hear you're the Timmins guy, I see you all over social. Like, help me out. I said, okay, okay. So I go see it. I walk through it. Property's kind of junky. It's definitely flippable, but a little more than I want to do. Like if I'm not going to sit in there for a 4 month flip.
Yeah.
It's just not the kind of business that I'm in. I know other flippers who would. So I said, okay, let me get this. Let me wholesale it for you. So I, gave it out. He didn't want me to lock it up very long. And so I was only had like 4 days. And we had to get a buyer, had a couple offers, but they were lower than what he expected. So anyway, called him. I broke down with him and I said, hey, listen, this is the situation. I don't think you're going to get it sold. You have squatters in it right now because I had my team go buy the property. You have squatters in it. The city's going to come start hitting you with fines and everything. And unless you're going to make this up every single time, it's not going to be something that's good. And I just threw it out there. I just said, "Hey, listen, I'll buy this for $1. I'll cover your legals. I'll make sure you don't spend any money on the transaction, but that's all I can do for you right now." He's like, "Okay, let me talk about it with my wife." Not 25 minutes later, he calls me back. He's like, "Hey, man, I prayed about it." And he said, most investors get one or two big breaks in their life. He's like, "This is going to be yours." I dumbfounded. You have the documents. I don't know. I was at work actually. And he said, "Oh yeah," he's like, "just drop the documents." And like, obviously I don't want him to change my mind. I called Bob and say, "Yo, I'm done for today." Get back home, drop the documents, lawyers and everything. And yeah, I got that, got a purchase for $1. And again, very quick wholesale, cleaned it up, put it back on the market and, made a very good spread very quickly on that one. So if I calculated the numbers on that one, that's one of the highlight deals, of the career for me for sure.
Damn. Okay. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So, how much did he end up losing on the deal?
I don't like money wise.
Yeah.
He bought it for 18.
Okay.
Um, he got there's a bunch of fines on it too that he had to pay. So I like lost money. Like I don't think he lost a lot of money, but I think he lost a lot of opportunity. But again, the problem was he wouldn't have been able to do it. Like there's no way he would have been
Oh,
able to
100%.
like either he would have had to find a contractor up there that one would work with someone out of town because that's hard enough to do when you're an out of town investor. You have to sit on it. Um, squatters are a big thing in Timmins, especially if you don't have people on it. Like I have like, when I have a property closing next Monday and we have a full system on like how to prevent squatters. Like there's a full SOP, we have a security company, we have different people walking through, we have lighting, like there's a whole thing that we have to put in just to make sure we protect our properties. And again, that's me building the system. But if you have never done it, you come back on Tuesday to do some more work and there's four people smoking crack
Yeah.
in your living room. You're like, what the heck? It's not fair.
100%. Yeah.
Right? So there's that. So yeah, monetarily, you probably lost a little bit, but I think opportunity cost is what would hurt him more. But I think that the win-win scenario is he was able to stay home, take care of his wife. He was able to do something nice for he was a little bit older investor. I mean, again, this is the relationship. If I wasn't a cop, I don't know if necessarily he would have been as nice to get a deal. But that works for everyone. Like, some people will not do business with me because I was in law enforcement, and that's fair. And some people will do deals with me because we both look the same. And some people won't do deals with me because we don't look the same, which is fine. But I think, the more people you talk to, the more relationships you get into, you're going to find your wins either way. So I think this is just one that fell into my lap and I was able to capitalize on it.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so if we move forward now, we spoken about how people out there can, start looking at the acquisition side, finding the deals. How do they, let's say they found a deal, they've put an offer in. How does the legal side work to it from getting your offer accepted to, you know, getting it sold? What does that look like in between?
For this deal or for general?
No, in general. Yeah.
Oh, are we talking more like you're working with a realtor or are you doing this all by yourself?
Let's say you walk in with a realtor.
Okay, so working with a realtor, first of all, make sure this guy's competent. This guy or gal is competent. Sorry, there's many, honestly, I've seen some female realtors that put some of these guys to shame. But make sure your realtor's competent. Like if there's ever a situation that you are working with a realtor and you're confused at all, literally at all, for a moment, you're working with the wrong realtor.
Yeah.
Competent realtors will have you fully understanding the process. They will tell you, hey, this is what's happening right now, and A, B, or C could happen next. This is, best case, worst case, probable case. Like you should be so well educated. A number of reasons. One, there's 7 million realtors out there, GTA alone. So if you can't find one who's going to do it, literally put your hand up and a realtor will come. I always joke, someone on Facebook puts, hey, I want to sell my house, and their internet literally blows up because, half the city is
Yeah.
coming. So I'm a realtor, I'll do it. Right.
Yeah.
So find a competent realtor. There's so many out there, like, do some due diligence and do that. But also have an understanding of, the clauses that you're signing. There's enough resources out there now, whether it's, AI helping you out or doing a couple Google searches or just sitting down with your realtor and taking the time. Make sure you understand the clauses. Make sure you understand the legal liability or jeopardy you're putting yourself into, or make sure you're understanding, hey, I'd like to put this clause in, but you understand what that means for you on the back end, just so you're protected and everything there. And, whether you're using the lawyer's realtor or you have sorry, whether you're using the realtor's lawyer
Realtor's
or a
lawyer.
lawyer
Yeah.
that you like, make sure they're proficient in getting that transaction done. Some things are nice and simple. You can get one of those, realestateworks.ca if it's a simple up down transaction. But if it's anything a little spicy, you got a vendor take back, some private money, delayed closing or some special clauses, work with a real estate lawyer. There's tons of them out there. Get a couple referrals and make sure you're comfortable knowing what you're getting into. And just track your dates, track all your documents, keep everything up because lawyers forget stuff, real estate agents forget stuff, but you as the buyer or you as a seller, it's your transaction. Do yourself a favor and make sure you're organized. So if there is anything that comes up, you say, hey, no, this is documented at this time and this time. And I've seen that serve myself well and some of the other clients. So those are the biggest things I would say in getting it, from accepted offer all the way to closing.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, I fully agree with that. Is your power team is everything. That's the extent of your leverage, really. So you want to find people that are competent in what you're looking to do. Not all realtors are created equally. Not all lawyers are created equally. So okay, you have yourself a good realtor, a good lawyer. You put an offer in. You do your due diligence. You remove conditions. You now close. You own the property. And then what do you typically do from there yourself? I know you said it's been as simple as just giving it a good clean. Um, what does that scope look like for you on the wholesale side?
Wholesale side. Are we long distance or are we close to home?
Either, really. And maybe both, maybe cover both, like how far you'd go on the long distance side in terms of the scope, and then if it's a little bit closer to home, where you'd sort of push that. Maybe so people can understand why.
Yeah, for sure. So I will do the long distance because I feel if you're ever going to do this at scale, the idea is to be able to create a system at which you're not actually doing everything. Don't get me wrong. I know a lot of real estate investors making a lot of money and they're doing a lot of stuff themselves. No shame. I'm just looking to make a business that's a little bit more hands off for myself. So we close on the property. First thing you got to do is secure that property. I like the lockbox method, whether that's yourself or you're having your assistant go transfer those keys to the lockbox. I have usually what I do to close is I have my assistant meet the locksmith at the property at closing, and we just
Mm,
change everything right there. It is more expensive. I've done it in ways that are cheaper, but for peace of mind, that's easier. Like we close, locksmith stairs, boom boom, front and back locks are changed. Those new keys are put directly into the lockbox. Everything's set. Pictures are taken. We have that set. Now up north, we have a security company that we work with, and for the first week, we had them on a irregular schedule. So they'll put a big sign in the front lawn secured by XYZ. And then we'll have, non-specific drive-bys, just so, if you drive by every day at 6, they're just gonna, the nefarious people will come at 7. So we have different times they come by day and night, just to show, hey, people are in that property. And then for the wholesale, whatever the scope of work is, while you have those conditions, I would have gone in, I would have had a scope of work created to get it to whatever wholesale level is. And the thing with wholesale, you're likely not staging it, you're likely not doing a full coat of paint or everything, you're likely cleaning it out and getting it ready for someone to come in and do those cosmetic renovations. So I have a couple good contractors I work with. Make sure you get that contract signed up front. You have your dates in line, your deposit for them as well, and then on closing, get to work. Especially because you're likely going to be in private money. Time is of the essence. So do all your work. It's crazy to me. People close and then think about all this stuff. Like they close, they're like, oh, I got to get my utilities. Oh, I got to find a contractor. It's like, bro, you're burning money already. Do this all
yeah,
when the seller has to pay the mortgage. As soon as I pay the mortgage, you better be in there day after day getting this thing going. So I
yeah.
think having your checklist and everything set up and like on day one, hit the ground running, whether that's, at the very least securing the property, but likely I'd like my contractors to start, day one, getting that thing ready and then have target dates. We use a task management system to kind of line up everything, but hit your dates, push yourself to get those dates done because, every 2 days early is an extra day or, extra week that you're not paying that private money, which adds to your bottom line. So I almost make it like a game. Like, if your date's Friday, can I get this done Wednesday? Why? Is there a reason why I cannot get this done Wednesday? And if you have to default to Friday, fine, but push it. Keep pushing those dates back. Keep pushing those dates back and see if you can scrape up a little bit more. And I think for me personally, I make more money on the management necessarily than the buy. I think I'm still pretty good at the negotiation on the buy, but I think the management for me, the project management, the property management, that's where I make a lot of money because the systems and the way that I operate the project or the property allows me to make a little bit extra money.
Got it. Got it. So there's more efficiency there, so you can condense that
Yeah.
timeline, right? Um, Okay, so then in terms of like scope, how far do you push it beyond cleaning? Like if you're getting contractors in there, what's like the maximum that you like? This for me personally is what keeps it within wholesale versus like going into flip territory. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that it passes the home inspection. That's what you want. I want to make it nice and easy to pass the home inspection. So you want to make sure the electrical is good. If there's any, because I just know what's gonna pop on the home inspection. So you just want to
Yeah.
make sure that. So I check all the outlets, just change them. Those are easy things to change. New lights and everything. This is a key that I love to do because I'm wholetailing it. I'm not trying to win, but I'll just go on Facebook Marketplace like the week before. Everyone's selling lights. People, I'm selling 10 lights. I'm like, oh, that's nice. You're selling 10 lights. Can I have them for free? 90% of the time they say yes. Make sure all the light fixtures are taken care of. Heating and air, make sure that's working and functional. And no leaks that are coming into the property. As long as you can get them that and it looks ugly, but it operates, they're good to go. So as long as I do that, it's nice and secure, it's nice and clean. I think that's a very nice product for flippers because they don't want to do the junk removal. They don't want to do all that extra stuff that, hurts them. But for me, that's the easy stuff to do. And if you're very good in your network, you can find those lower quality because having a plumber come, that's $100 an hour easy, no problem, no whatever it is. Whether you're a plumber and you can eat that cost, but since I don't, I want to get contractors in there that are not expensive, almost like laborers, right? So that's
Yeah.
easy stuff. Putting up light fixtures, non-permanent electrical stuff like that. Get that shell of the property nice and clean, so that I can just hand it to an investor or even a first-time home buyer who wants to do some stuff. Say, hey, here's a property, it's clean, and it just needs your touch, right? And then that's the product that I like to give out there.
Got it. Got it. So the end client is usually an investor looking to flip the property, maybe burr the property, or a first-time home buyer who's looking for a property where they can put a little bit of work in themselves and maybe get it at a lower price point, right?
Yeah, so I found investor would definitely be option two, but I found I like the first-time home buyer who can barely qualify for a seven. They've been looking at the 250 range, and they keep getting bid out at the 250 range, but I come in with a 220 property, but in way worse condition. They're like, oh, that's fine. I just want to buy it. I can renovate this over time. And because they're a first-time home buyer, they will pay a premium over an investor because the investor needs to make a spread. I get that. So if
100%.
you can
Yeah.
get a property clean enough that because they're going to do an inspection, so clean enough that it'll pass the inspection, but not high enough that you need to get that, full ARV. That's the sweet spot, right? Because there's a whole bunch of people who will come down in price and look at that price. If three and ones are selling for 250 and you can get yours on the market for 220, everybody will be looking at 220 and they'll be doing their own calculations. Oh, I can do the floors this year. I can do the second bedroom next year, and they will renovate that over time, but they'll pay you that 220 now. So I found that's a really good product. And then again, if it's nice and clean for an investor, flippers, like, they love it. They just want to come in, they can do their thing, they'll put their cruise in, and I don't have to worry about that.
Got it, got it. Because yeah, that's I mean, when you're doing a flip, that's a big thing already is
Yeah.
not wanting to over renovate for the comps. Now in this case, you also don't want to do too much if it's going to go to a flipper, right? Like um if you're doing light fixtures, I'm guessing you're not going for the most premium light fixtures because they may want to come out and change it themselves anyway, or like newest expensive light fixtures. You're just
Nothing's
trying
new.
to
Like I literally, like, I have a couple guys that'll go on Facebook Marketplace. Like, their only role in my business is to pick up stuff off Facebook Marketplace. I said, hey, I will give you I'll pay them hourly plus 10% of whatever we get off Facebook Marketplace. So, if I say, hey, I just made a deal with these people, here's the address, go pick up 5 lights. They'll drive over, pick up the 5 lights, they'll put it on their timesheet, and they drop the lights off at the property. Man, I've been getting free lights. There's so much construction material. Doors are always cheap. Wouldn't get windows on there because it's too hard to measure. But
yeah.
honestly, you can get, I would say, 60% of used building supplies on Facebook Marketplace if you're willing to look. Like, you need a vanity in there just to hold face. I'll get a vanity for $40. Like, you can get it done. And again, I'm wholetailing it. I'm not trying to win on, premium fixtures and everything. I just need that property to look and hold together so that buyer or investor can come in.
I love it. I love it. That's so smart. One thing I like that you mentioned in there is you have other people doing it for you. So you obviously aware of the value of your time and put in systems and get in scalability, not having to do it all yourself. So just some key things that I picked up. Then of course, if you want to be doing this long distance, it just makes sense that you have that already. Okay, so got it. So you got the property cleaned, you got it ready, and now it's time to start marketing the property, start getting it out there, start getting people in, and ideally getting a buyer. What does that look like for you? I know you said you have your license, right? So you licensed, so you're a realtor yourself. Does if someone's looking to get into wholetailing, do they have to get their license? What does that look like? Does not having their license eat into the entire spread if they need to get a realtor to list it for them? All of those things with regards to taking it across the finish line there.
Yeah, for sure. So again, like we talked about those three prongs of a flip, controlling the money, controlling the transaction, or controlling the construction. So this is my foray into controlling the transaction, right? Because I know I
Yeah.
can make 5% across the board on it. So for me, that means my wholesale, I can buy a little bit higher. Not that I should, but I can buy a little bit higher. Like I know this one realtor, I had lunch with him. He's in Toronto. He does probably 40 deals a year with no clients. He just does himself. He breaks even on the construction and only makes his commission. Right. So he's pretty proficient at it. He's really not trying to make money on the flip, but he just knows I'm going to make 5% on both sides of that. And he just pretty much runs he's his own client and he just makes his transaction fees, which I think is a great business. You don't have to deal with anyone. You
Yeah.
can put offers in whatever you want. Like it's not a bad business. And he's grown it over years, right? Because you need capital to continue to do these flips and everything. So that's kind of where I liked it. Don't get me wrong, I love working with clients and everything, but you're managing another set of emotions with that. So if you're wholetailing, I found I get a little extra spread because I am the realtor. But at the end of the day, especially if you're working on value market, there's tons of realtors who will do that for you. If you can show that you're going to do some volume, you can easily negotiate that down. Another thing you can do is, if you're going to purchase with a realtor, make a deal on the buy and sell commission on either side. There's so many the realtor supply is so high that you as the client have the ability to negotiate. Now, again, I would negotiate for a poor realtor, but you would have to negotiate and show the value to that realtor. Said, hey, I'm going to do 10 deals a year with you. It doesn't make sense for you to charge me the full 5% every time when I can go find someone else who did it. Like, I'd like to work with you, but let's get an agreement. And to be honest, I would love that. I would rather a client that I charge half commission, but they're going to do 10 deals a year and it's going to be nice and easy like clockwork. Like, they know how to do it. They set up pretty much
Yeah.
half the listing. They give me all the information, make my job easy. I would much rather that than fighting tooth and nail for 2.5% for someone who will do one deal every century, right?
100%. 100%. Fully agree with that. Okay, so people out there listening, they're like, okay, I have a good grasp on the entire process from start to finish. Does this work in my market? Does it work in every market? Is the opportunity out there, or are there markets that are just more primed for this than others?
No, every single market. Like that's why, I think when, there's stuff in the news, everyone's like, oh, real estate's going down and, real estate's going this. I said, I don't care what market you're in, buyer's
Yeah.
market, seller's market, someone will need to buy, someone will need to sell. There will be some sort of personal distress, there will be some sort of property distress, and there will be some sort of market distress. The ability for you to find that might increase. It might be harder or easier for you to identify those, but there's never a city, never a market, never a real estate neighborhood that doesn't have someone with one of those three or a buyer willing to buy that. So it's just up to
Yeah.
you as either a licensed real estate agent or an investor to go source those opportunities. And again, back in 2021, it was easy. Like you could sneeze on a property, close your eyes, do everything wrong with it, and make 50K. But now it's a little bit harder. But there's still people who are in personal distress. Like the property I just purchased, like this, like, they needed to move. I was able to get a great deal on the property. I know the ARVs of properties that are selling. It just comes down to a math equation. And if you can take the emotion out of it, you're able to find some good deals. I'm not going to wholesale this one. I think there's enough spread that I'll keep this one as a rental. But there's opportunities everywhere like that. It's just, what are you looking for? Are you looking for are you looking to make your job harder, or are you looking to solve problems? And I think if who said it? I think Matt McKeever said it, more problems, more profits. So I just said, hey, what's the stickiest situation we can get ourselves into? And let's get the profits on the other side.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Now, a couple of questions. So, first one is market's not an issue. So people listen like, okay, fine. Market's not an issue. There's opportunity in every market. I get that. Fully believe that. What are some of the barriers of entry or requirements for me to pursue the strategy? Is there a certain amount of capital that I may need? Obviously, it would be market dependent. But what does that look like? What are some of the requirements I need to make the strategy work for myself?
100%. You're gonna need some cash. I'm not a big believer in the no money down or no money investing. Like, so investing, the word itself comes from taking excess capital, which means you have money, and putting that excess capital to work. But if you don't have excess capital, no disrespect, you shouldn't be investing. Like, even when I started, I think I was trying to make money in real estate, but I needed to make money and invest it in real estate. So I think I'm slowly getting to
Yeah.
a point where that's becoming more of the reality. And I tell people, like, it's not a bad thing. Like, you could take 2, 3 years, save up your capital, like figure out a way to make money and then invest it in real estate. Yes, there's some ways to make active income in real estate, but those come with like their own headaches. Just because you have your real estate license, you're not making 250K a year just because you have your license, right?
Yeah.
So I would say capital for sure is an issue. There's ways around that. Again, most of the deals you're going to do, you're going to fund with private money. So you can get those down payment funds from other sources, such as, line of credit, gift funds, whether you're raising money from other investors. I don't recommend that until you're actually qualified. I'm sure you remember the craze in 2021. Everyone with a heartbeat had a course on raising private money and taking all the investors, and now we're getting the fallout now. So
Yeah.
I don't necessarily would recommend private raising capital right off the hop, especially if you're not like super proficient at it. But there's other ways, like, get your credit app, go to all the banks, get your lines of credit available. Not saying you need to use them, but make sure you have those sources of funds available. And whatever your vehicle is at making money, whether that's your job, you have a business, or you're self-employed, get sick at making money. Like, if you have that taken care of, you can, foray that money into other real estate activities. It's not an asset class where you can necessarily have no money and do exceptionally well without taking on exceptional risk. So I'm a big believer, have some money, start with smaller deals. Oh, market thing. I would find a market that is like the market. I think I'm in Timmins. So I think that's a little bit of a smaller market. And I think, doing it again, I might have chosen a slightly bigger market to start in. But hey, I was a lifeguard. I was broke. What do you want from me?
Yeah.
But if you go to a slightly bigger market that the land transfer tax and all the additional closing fees don't outweigh the cost of the deal, then I think you're good. Like, I like, Belleville, Cornwall, some areas outside, what is it? Not Pefferlaw, but some areas outside of Ottawa, Kawartha Lakes a little bit north. Like, there's some like secondary, tertiary markets that have that arbitrage you can do it. But like, if you're down here in like, Pickering, GTA, the land transfer tax alone is going to kill your deal, right? It's just like, the transaction costs are so high. Versus if you can get a little bit out of the city and work your way back slowly, I think that's a way to kind of get this wholesale strategy gone. But the reason I like wholesale as well is less time on the market. So with wholesale, your product's a little bit better. It's a little easier to get into, and you can track your ARVs a little bit closer. So you're not going to be holding onto this private money for 4 to 6 months. Maybe you're only holding it for 2 to 4 months, which again reduces your risk, right? So if you can continue to play, you can continue to win. But if you get knocked out because you held the flip for 8 months and the private money, like, ate everything through your profit, not to mention your savings, it's very hard to do another deal.
Got it. Got it. And that's one thing we blessed with this idea in Alberta is the land transfer tax.
Yeah.
So, okay, nope, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, they have some money and they're like, okay, fine, I have a holistic idea on the entire process. It makes sense. Qualifying myself in my market, I think I could make this work. Um, what are some go or no go criteria that I should be looking for to decide, yes, this is to make a good wholesale deal, or no, don't even bother putting an offer in on?
Yeah, no, that's great. So what I would say is avoid any of those big systems. So roofs, HVAC, foundations, and electrical. Those contractors are very expensive to get out there. Like, you're not going to get anyone to do that stuff cheap. But stuff like junk removal, handyman work, painting, flooring, and stuff like that, those are cheaper contractors. And again, your job is to increase that bottom line, not necessarily make the best product. So you got to remember who you're selling to, and I still have to work on this sometimes, not getting into projects where I'm like, this is not my buyer, or especially with tenants. I do the same thing all the time. Anyway, avoid those big ones because they're so expensive to get in. And I know my buyer's looking for a clean shell to go in and do that work. So why over renovate or do anything outside that work? Deliver the product that you planned on giving and let the market do what it's supposed to do. Trust the numbers that you've run, trust the experience that you have, and stay away from that big stuff. Anytime I've forayed or said, oh, okay, I can fix the roof. I got a good guy, blows my budget, and I'm just like, that was all that work for very little payoff. So I am trying to stay very tight to that buy box and avoid those big four areas.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so if you look into it, you're doing some due diligence. You're like, you know what, the big items look like they fine. I know there might be a few minor items that we're gonna sort out anyway. Are you still going in with a official inspection condition on your offer, or are you trying to be more competitive and say, look, we need to get financing sorted unless you have the capital? I didn't even ask that. Are you just upfront buying the houses cash, or do you have some form of short-term financing to help you hold it through? What does that look like?
Yeah, for financing, like we usually go private. I've been fortunate enough to create some relationships with some different lenders. And again, this comes just because you're doing volume of deals. And now, the more deals you do, maybe the lower the broker fees, they'll get paid on the back end, which I really like,
Yeah.
depending on, where their capital stack is. So doing that or less down or like, less money down. So I like that. So yes, I bought a couple properties straight cash. But again, well, when I say cash, like off of line of credit, not necessarily like,
Yeah, yeah,
cash for the property.
for sure.
But private is usually where I go. I work with some great mortgage brokers helping to set that up. Um, and then in terms of the offer, so usually I'm first, right? So they're kind of nervous anyway. So what I'll usually do if I'm coming first is I'll put a walkthrough condition on. And if I'm first, it's usually a property that I'm pretty comfortable with, again, with some experience I've been through. Or if I'm last, then I give them the whole kitchen sink. I throw everything at them. I say, I'm going to rip this property apart because if I don't buy it, you're not going to sell it. You've
100%.
been on the property for 168 days. Who cares if I'm in here for 5 days ripping this thing apart? The alternative is you sit here and have your property not sold. And at this point, it doesn't even hurt my feelings
Yeah.
when they're like, oh, we don't want that offer. That okay,
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, you have a problem. You've put your property on the open market or let someone know that you want to sell it. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem property that I'm trying to sell. My stuff is operating well. So you're the one with the issue. I'm trying to help. So
Yeah.
I think if you come at it with that mindset, I'm not taking advantage, but saying, hey, I want to help, but I need to know what I'm getting myself into. And sellers who are more apt to that, man, I find way better deals are able to be created.
Yep, that makes a ton of sense because yeah, you're absolutely right. Where are you catching the seller? Is it like the initial offer, or is it like down the road? Okay. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. So are you doing the this sort of like a bare bones offer when you're trying to be competitive initially? What are some things that you're doing to try and get that offer accepted right away versus them like, hey, I'll just wait a day or two?
Yeah. So I just make my irrevocable like aggressive. Like I'll call the realtor and said, hey, you have an offer coming in. I'm giving you like 3 hours and see what they'll do. Right. If they counter, because I'll probably put a bare bones offer in my favor, but very short, irrevocable. I'll have them counter, and then I can see what they actually want. If they don't counter, they're not really ready to move quick. I said, no problem. I'll see you in 60 days when it's been on the market for a bit. Or they'll counter. I said, okay, y'all want to play some ball. And
Yeah.
then I can say, okay, this is actually what you want in an offer and see if we can get something down there. Because I might go and clean with a really really bad price, maybe one or two terms, and a really short irrevocable. They'll counter with actually what's important to them, and then I might add back. Oh, said, hey, I can agree with that condition you put in, but now I want an inspection. Now I want financing. Now I want all these things that'll work for me as well. So the understanding of how to play with the clauses, understanding where you're putting yourself legally, and some realtors just mess up. Like they don't understand the days, and I've got them caught on that so many times. Like they might put a condition 4 days or they don't update it properly. And again, it's not my responsibility to do your work for you. So I back things, we get to it and they're like, oh, are you ready to close? And I'm like, ooh, you actually put 5 days for the conditions and I'm either going to back out and like you guys are going to be holding the bag, or I'm going to drop my offer by, 10 grand. And either you drop it by 10 grand and it closes, or you don't close the transaction. And everyone's like, oh, that's unfair. It's like, it's not unfair. That's how the contracts go. And that's why you pay your 2.5% to a competent realtor to make sure you don't put yourself in jeopardy like that. I've been doing this for a while. So those are the things I look for. And again, if you can take a win, take the win, right? Again, this is
Yeah.
not me taking advantage. This is like understanding how to, negotiate and the legal clauses like in a transaction.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. I get that. That makes sense. Okay. Okay. And obviously a lot of this comes with, like you mentioned, and Alex Amos is a big proponent of this, is put in the reps in. So people listening out there, like, this makes a ton of sense. It's a strategy I'd be keen on pursuing. Realistically, Isaiah, how many reps do I need to be putting in to actually stand a chance at making this work? What are some of the inputs that you put in yourself, or if you were getting started day one, that you'd tell your earlier, younger self to put in to actually make this thing work? How many deals are you looking at? How many offers are you putting in? Like, if you could just give us some numbers across the board there.
Yeah, I would start with like I remember when I was starting. So I was in this mentorship program, and they had this thing called the 100 call challenge, and I took it and I put on a set. I did like 650 calls. I remember I still have the log. 650 calls, just getting my name out there in the market, and even to this day, like it's still serving me dividends. So I would start by calling everyone, whether your strategy is on market or off market. If you're on market, call every single realtor that has something listed. Let them know who you are, what you want to buy, and why they should, work with your offer when they see it come through. And if you're off market, whatever your off market strategy is, do 100 reps of that per month. If you can get 100 reps per week, great. But I get it. We all have lives and everything. So start with the rule of 100. For offers, start generating like your own offers. Like there's so much stuff out there, especially in Ontario, on how to write your own contract. So start with that. Again, if you're going to use a realtor for the first little bit, that's fine, but you should be well aware of these contracts, what it's going through, so that when you send it, you can move quickly. Like you're not going through, what does this mean? Or you have a list of conditions. Like even now, like when I'm working with an out of town realtor, or if I don't want to draft the offer, I'm sending them the conditions. Like I'm sending them a little template to make their job easier, like putting into
Yeah,
systems like that so you can fire off offers. Like realtors have no problems making offers, but it's just the back and forth. They got to ask you like 17 different things. It takes so long, you don't reply. But if I have a client that does this for me. He's not a real estate agent. He has a nice, tight offer template, says everything that I need. Now all I got to do is sit down, copy and paste everything. I can get an offer out to them, within an hour. And that's like the kind of speed that you need to do deals fast. And then you need to start learning every offer that you put out, every counter that you get back. Take down all the clauses. Take down, like, how did this happen? Why did this happen? If you don't understand, hey, why did this change? Or is this something I need a lawyer to review? Like, start taking down that and have like a catalog of, firepower or ammunition that how to do deals. Sometimes I got to go through my catalog and say, I need a clause for this. Or I remember, I did an offer and this random clause was in there. Take that clause. If you don't understand it, ask your real estate agent. If they don't understand it, ask the lawyer, and start, putting together a list of that so you can start firing stuff out quick and dirty. And, when I see clauses I've never seen before, and I'm like, ooh, what is that? And you start adding that to your
100%.
repertoire there. So make your calls, make your offers, right? It's just a numbers game. You put out 100 offers, 10 of them are going to get accepted, and maybe 2 of them are actually going to close. And that's what you're going to need to do. And then the final thing is need to know how to underwrite. Again, I'm no hand underwriting. Like nobody's smart enough to do that at scale. Use a system. I like dealcheck.io. Bigger Pockets has calculators. You can pay some of these gurus online for their own calculator. I don't care what you use, but just use the same calculator so your metrics stay even, and then just start pumping stuff into that. Pumping. Like when I was starting, I was doing, at least 10 offers, 10 deals a week. Just, whatever's on the MLS, whatever you find off market, run the numbers, because then you get to see the abnormalities. If you run 10 deals and they're all like, let's say 5% cash and cash return, you see one deal that pops at like 12%, you're like, oh, why is that 12? What parts of that property, what parts of that deal made that 12? Then you're
Yeah,
like, oh, maybe that's the buy box you're looking for. Start creating a buy box like that. So just do the reps. The work that is required is far greater than you think. And even me, like when I get like, man, I'm not really moving my business, I'll talk to someone who's, doing something that I want to do. And they're like, oh, bro, your volume is nowhere near what's required right now. I said, thank you for prioritizing what I need to do. And I think, just the work needs doing. Whether you want to do it or not, the work needs doing.
100%. 100%. I think it's a big blind spot for almost all of us on every level that we get to every second point is we just realize that we're just not doing enough. And, then we have to figure out ways to do it, whether it's through, getting more efficient at the systems or how we spend in our time, what we spend in our time doing. But yeah, no, 100%. I love that. And I have a bank myself as well, where I just have like all the different like contract terms and stuff. And when I come across something new
Nice.
and I'm like, I love that, add that in, or I create something and I'm like, I'm not going to recreate this every time. I'm going to store this and I can quickly just reuse it, save some brain power. But yeah, no, 100%. I fully agree with that. Now, I want to quickly just do a rapid fire questions
Sure.
here. So just 1, 2, maybe 3 sentences max. Just first answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Let's just have fun with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love it.
Bar or wholetail? What's more scalable?
Burr.
One thing investors waste too much time on.
The social media and their website.
Love it. Logo design.
Yeah, sorry, yo, just on that, I think it's hilarious. Like that sometimes like the investor community, we're all just like making content for each other, and then like none of us like no one's doing deals. We're all talking about investing strategies to each other. Like, bro, we all know how to do it. Like, go do
100%.
deals. Stop talking to us, right? And
100%.
I was guilty of that for sure.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what if everyone who's liking my stuff is an active investor? Like, what am I doing? So don't worry about your website, your logo, and your Instagram. Go get out there and start doing some deals.
100%. I think it's a low-hanging fruit for them to try and create investing content to try and potentially attract, I don't know, money partners or whatever. But if you just get out there, do the deals, document what you're doing there, and it scales from there. I love that. It's a good answer. Most overrated real estate strategy.
Flipping.
Flipping. Most underrated tool or app that you use every day.
I want to say ChatGPT, but I'm gonna go with the calendar app actually.
I love that. You want to know another one that I think a lot of people underrate? It's the app called the one that has the phone icon.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like people overlook that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's where the money is, man. Behind those phone calls, that's where
Right?
all the deals and opportunity lie.
100%. That's how you get the deals. That's how you build the relationships. That's how you really move the needle. It's probably not the most comfortable, most sexy one, but that's the one that works for sure.
That's where.
But I do like the calendar one because you're right. You need to master your time, and having a calendar and working with that makes a world of a difference. What's one piece of advice you ignored and regretted?
Not house hacking off the rip. If I were to do it again, I would have ripped 4 house hacks right off the top. I probably would not have needed to go long distance real estate investing. I would have just house hacked 4 duplex to 4plexes, and I would be done.
100%. I have the exact same thing. I have a family and whatever now. It's not there, but like when you're younger, like it's a
and what am I doing? Like, what was I
powerful
doing?
strategy. Yeah.
Oh my god.
100%. If real estate disappeared tomorrow, what would you do next?
Like I would be in a dirty business. I'm already looking into some business acquisitions. Like I love like septic, commercial plumbing, porta potties, sewer. Like I would get involved in a dirty business.
Yeah. Cody Sanchez she's a big proponent for all that. Yeah, 100%, man.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be anything flashy for it to be a good business. You know what I mean?
I want to wear a Carhartt jacket, not a suit. Like, I always tell I do all the photos with the suits and the nice everything. But if it was really up to me, I'd rather do business in dirty jeans and a Carhartt jacket and track pants, sweaty from the gym. If I could figure out a way to do the same kind of volume wearing that, I'd be like, that's a lifestyle business I'm down for.
100%, man. Oh, Isaiah, this has been an insightful, at times even funny conversation, man. And I know there was so much that you'd come back with where I'm like, I can take this in 10 different directions. Hopefully I'm choosing the right one to dig deeper into, but
of course
we could keep this conversation going for hours and probably barely still scratch the surface here. For people that are listening and they want to keep this going, they want to learn more about this, where would be the best place for them to follow along on your journey, maybe even get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm at Isaiah Henry Real Estate across social media. If you can't find me, just Google Isaiah Henry Real Estate. There'll be enough there to figure out. Call me, text me, however you want to get in contact with me, and either myself or my team will get back to you.
I love it. Well, we'll include everything in the show notes so our listeners can follow along, stay connected. But Isaiah, it's been great having you on, brother. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciate it. And this conversation has been a blast. Highlight of the week. So that's amazing.
For our listeners out there, if you're looking for more valuable insights, be sure to subscribe. Share this with someone who can benefit. And as always, keep investing smartly. Thank you for tuning in to the Wealth Through Real Estate Show. If you want to revolutionize your systems and scale with less stress, then you don't want to miss my episode with Colin and Nicole. This is your host, Aure Noble, signing off.